Atria looks like an AI ad generator. That is the least interesting reason to buy it. The real product is the loop around the generator. Live, Meta, and TikTok ads, Raya reading patterns, your own brand profile translating those patterns, and then image variants coming out the other side. That loop is why this tool makes sense for paid social teams. If all you want is cheap static images, there are cheaper ways to get them. If you want competitor research to turn into a real brief without leaving the app, Atria becomes a much more serious buy. I'm Theo. Today I'm reviewing Atria, including what Raya actually adds, how the clone flow works, where core becomes the wrong tier, and why video-first teams still need another tool nearby. Plus, the trial has a card requirement and an auto-convert detail you should understand before you run your first test. Let's pop it open. Start with the part most ad generators do not have, the research surface. This is Atria's ad library, and the important thing is not just that there are saved ads here. It is the way the grid is already filtered by creative job. Format, platform, industry, status, language, and theme all sit above the cards. That means you can narrow the search to the kind of paid social problem you actually have, instead of staring at a huge swipe file and pretending inspiration is strategy. In this filtered view, the platform filter keeps the feed honest, while the ad cards change underneath it. That is the first win. The ad library is not a museum. It is the starting input for the creative loop. So the first question is not, can it make an ad? The better question is, can it find a useful pattern before it makes anything? That distinction matters, because paid social teams do not lose time only on production. They lose time translating a winning reference into something their own brand can actually run. The second win is the competitor overview. This is where Atria stops being a flat grid. You can see the live ad count up top, the media mix bar underneath it, and then the rows that actually matter for creative decisions. Buyer clusters, USPs, emotions, and themes. Then you can drop into the actual creative cards and check whether the pattern shows up in live ads, not just in a summary row. You are not just asking, what ad did they run? You are asking, what angle keeps repeating, and which desire is it trying to hit? That is the research layer I care about. It gives you a pattern to test, not just a screenshot to admire. The third win is the brand profile, because this is where the clone flow either gets specific or turns generic. Atria is storing the website, industry, colors, products, audience notes, competitor list, scenarios, and the profile assets in one place. The point is simple. Raya needs a source of truth before it can translate somebody else's ad into your offer. The audience tab is where that source of truth gets more precise. Situations, archetypes, and target customers. If this profile is thin, the output gets broad. If the profile is real, the prompt has something to grab. I would spend the first 30 to 45 minutes here before judging any generation quality. Not because setup is fun, because the setup is the difference between inspired by a winner and random ad with your logo on it. Now the pieces connect. This is the creative brief modal that opens from a reference ad. Reference image on top, the brand and product choice below, then audience scenarios, the audience choice, visual identity, aspect ratio, model, and the generate control. And when it comes back, the results land in image gen with labels and date grouping. This is the part that makes Atria feel different from a standalone generator. A competitor ad becomes a brief. The brief pulls from your brand profile, and the variants stay inside the same workspace. It is not magic. It is a shorter handoff, and in paid creative, shorter handoffs are worth real money. More important, it changes the meeting after the test. Instead of debating a blank prompt, the team can point at a real reference, a real angle, and 4 on-brand directions. That is a better creative conversation. That is the strongest case for Atria. It is a research to variant system. The library finds a pattern. Raya explains it, the brand profile translates it, and image gen gives you something testable. But that loop has weak points, and they are not vague AI quality complaints. They are buying lane problems. First catch, core can look like the safe starting tier, but it is not the full intelligence workflow. The signup starts cleanly enough. Account, email, password, and the normal onboarding fields. Then the checkout screen makes the trial path clear. 7 days, card required, then auto subscription to Core monthly at $159 unless you cancel. Core gives you the library and generation path, but the AI insights on followed brands sit on Plus. So if you are buying Atria for Raya's strategic read, do not judge the product from a tier that walls off the thing you came for. The workable path is simple. Use the trial on one real competitor ad, then decide whether the insight layer is actually saving strategy time. Second catch. The analytics side is useful, but only if the data exists. Before the dashboard has signal, the product is asking you to connect an account and add a data source. Once the data is there, this screen shows a creative diversity score and the breakdown row by format, age and gender, and platform. That is valuable if your ad account is connected and has enough recent activity. But for a brand with no history, or a buyer evaluating from a cold workspace, this panel is not going to manufacture performance signal out of thin air. The way around it is to treat analytics as the feedback loop after the first tests run, not as proof before they do. Atria can help you choose what to test. Your account data has to confirm what worked. Third catch. Raya is strongest when the question has context. The blank Raya entry point is useful, but only after the brand and competitor context exists behind it. Here, the prompt is asking what competitors are doing, and Raya is pulling from configured competitors and the brand context. That is the right use. But if your brand profile is shallow, or your market lives outside Meta and TikTok, the answer gets thinner. B2B SaaS, regulated categories, and channel diverse teams should cross-check LinkedIn and Google transparency data before treating Atria as the whole market. What you actually do is narrow the job. Use Raya to accelerate paid social creative reads, not to replace every channel signal you use. The valuable output is not that Raya sounds smart. The valuable output is a narrower creative bet. Which angle keeps repeating? Which claim keeps surviving across formats? And which audience pain is worth testing next? One more limitation before the workflow. This is a stronger static and carousel system than a finished UGC video system. That is not a knock. It is lane definition. If your winners are creator-style talking videos, pair this with a video tool. If your bottleneck is finding angles and generating static variants faster, this is exactly where Atria has room to shine. The trick is buying it for the right job. Let me walk through the first task I would run on day one. Clone a competitor's static ad into an on-brand test variant. I would start in discovery, filtered down to the active ad type and channel I actually care about. I am not hunting for a pretty ad. I am hunting for a repeatable angle. Then I open the competitor overview to see whether the pattern repeats across ads, not just one lucky creative. The media mix and top message rows tell me whether this is a real campaign theme. From there, I start the clone brief. Brand, product, scenario, audience choice, visual identity, ratio, model, generate. That is the key middle step most people skip when they test AI creative. They jump from reference to output without forcing the brand translation. Finally, I judge the first 4 variants in image gen, not as finished ads, as creative hypotheses. The output history gives me a date group, brand, product, and objective, so I can come back and iterate instead of losing the test in a prompt window. The first pass I want is not publish this untouched. It is, which hook deserves a second round? If one variant only copies the layout and loses the reason the original worked, I cut it. If 2 variants keep the same reference angle but change the proof, I keep both. The tool gets you to a testable board faster. You still pick the test. That workflow is the reason I like the product. It is not trying to make you clever from a blank box. It starts with evidence, makes you define the brand translation, and gives you variants to test. The learning curve is mostly setup discipline. If you rush the profile, the output feels generic. If you feed it real positioning, real audience language, and a real competitor reference, the first pass becomes something you can react to. From an attribution angle, that matters because creative testing is already noisy. I do not want another tool adding ambiguity before the ad even launches. Atria is useful when it reduces the number of subjective handoffs before the test. Less, what should we make? More, which of these 4 do we run first? My practical checklist would be 4 questions. Did the reference ad come from a real live campaign, not a random inspiration board? Did Raya explain the angle in language your buyer would recognize? Did the brand profile force the variant back into your own offer, not just your color palette? And did the first output give you a testable hypothesis you can name in one sentence? If the answer is yes across those 4, the workflow is doing something useful. If the answer is no, do not blame the image model first. Go back to the input, because that is usually where the weak link is. Quick pause if that exact loop is what you came for. Go to stackinspectors.com/Atria and test it against one real competitor ad, not a blank prompt. Start with a library, open the clone brief, use your own brand profile, then judge the first variants like test ideas. The trial is 7 days and card required, so run the test on purpose. If the loop saves you the handoff from research to brief to first creative, that is the signal. If it only gives you a nice looking image, you learned that too. The tier choice is easier than the pricing page makes it look. Core is the library first tier. 4,000 credits, 5 ad accounts, 3 brand profiles, 5 seats, and 50 followed brands, but no AI insights. Plus is the serious Atria tier for most active paid social teams. 10,000 credits, 10 accounts, 8 brand profiles, 8 seats, 100 followed brands, and the AI insights layer. Business is the cap breaker. More accounts, more brands, more storage, and a custom annual deal. So my shortcut is this. Core if you mainly want the swipe file and basic generation. Plus if Raya Insight is the reason you are here. Business if the limits, not the feature set, are what break first. The honest map is lane-based, not winner-based. Atria is the research to clone loop. Find live ads, read the pattern, translate it through your brand, and produce static variants. Foreplay sits closer to pure ad spy and creative strategy handoff. It is the tool I would compare when the team already has a designer or media buyer who just needs better references and briefs. AdCreative.ai is the static variant and scoring lane. Its professional tier is much cheaper than Atria Plus, so it makes sense when the job is broad image production and score-based iteration, not competitor intelligence. Arc Ads owns a different problem. AI actor UGC video. If creator-style video is the winning format, Atria helps with research and angle selection, but Arc Ads is where the video production happens. So the question is not, which logo is better? The question is, which job is central this month? Spy, static generation, video production, or the full library to Raya loop? Here is my verdict. Most active Meta and TikTok creative teams land on Plus, because the whole reason to buy Atria is the intelligence loop around Raya, not the cheapest way to generate a square ad. One exception, library-only solo buyers can start on Core if they do not need followed brand insights. Another exception, video-first teams should treat Atria as research support and keep a dedicated UGC video tool in the stack. Full breakdowns on screen. Fit decides this one, not price. The buy signal I would use is brutally practical. After one trial run, did Atria change the next creative meeting? If the team walks in with 3 live references, a named angle, 4 on-brand variants, and 1 sharper hypothesis, that is a useful system. If the team still has to rebuild the brief from scratch in another doc, you are not getting the premium part of the product. There is also a team shape test. A solo buyer who only needs a better swipe file can keep Core honest. An active paid social team with multiple brands will feel the profile and insight caps quickly. An agency running several clients should not pretend the entry tier is a serious home base. The profile count, account count, and followed brand limits become workflow limits, not nice-to-have limits. That is why I keep coming back to Plus as the real default. It is the first tier where the product matches the way a paid creative team actually works. If that is the workflow you are buying for, go through stackinspectors.com/Atria and run the trial against one real campaign brief. Pick one competitor ad, make one brand profile better than you think you need, generate the first variance, and ask the only question that matters. Did this save a strategy handoff? If yes, Atria belongs in the stack. If no, you found your lane before spending a month on it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.